Retrospectives have been written about the fourth Elder Scrolls game, Oblivion, for at least 13 years. More than any other title in the Elder Scrolls series, Oblivion is revisited year on year by journalists, YouTubers, and even academics. But why? Why does Oblivion attract so much attention 17 years after it was released?
They should have listened to me.
We'll be swimming in blood soon. Yuck.
Memes certainly have a large part to play. Oblivion is perhaps most famous at this point for its primitive AI, to the point that the phrase Oblivion NPC has entered popular parlance. PewDiePie's viral playthrough of Oblivion back in 2017 also did much to popularise the perception of Oblivion as a meme game. However, even before PewDiePie's playthrough, reviewers noted that Oblivion was an unusually humorous RPG, one that almost didn't seem to take itself seriously. Replaying Oblivion today, that's certainly what stands out the most to me. The brilliance of Oblivion is that it's at the same time deadly serious and laughably eccentric. The opening sets the ground for what you might think is a typical high-stakes dramatic plot. The Emperor is murdered before the player's very eyes, and instantly thrust upon them is a quest to find the lost heir to the throne in order to stop a demonic invasion. But whilst Oblivion provides the player a chance to fulfill their heroic fantasies, the game also throws them into a world that often verges on the absurd. If you wander just south of Shadenhall, you'll encounter the village of Hackdirt and its inexplicably hostile and evasive inhabitants. Probe deeper into their lives and you'll find that they worship the mysterious Deep Ones, who live in the caverns beneath their homes. Enter the caverns and you'll find half-naked men with clubs, ostensibly the Deep One's greatest devotees. There's no sign of the Deep Ones in the caverns, apart from, if you go to the lowest levels, a hum. Meanwhile, in the Imperial City, you can join a group of expert vampire hunters, who, it turns out, are oblivious to the fact they're being led by an arch-vampire. And you'll enjoy all sorts of weird and wonderful quests if you join the Dark Brotherhood, but a particularly memorable one is when you attend a house party where you have to surreptitiously kill all the guests, like Hercule Poirot in reverse. It's not just that Oblivion dips its toe in eccentricity, it permeates the entire game. Every city seems to have at least one bonkers NPC. Stroll around Skingrad and you'll encounter Glarthir, the wood elf equivalent of Alex Jones.
Here's my problem. I'm being followed. Watched. Marukotti selectives, maybe.
And in the Imperial City, if you complete the arena quest line, you'll unfortunately earn the adoration of the manic, adoring fan. If Oblivion wasn't an eccentric game already, it was, then this status was confirmed with the release of the game's final DLC in January 2007, The Shivering Isles. This DLC takes the player to the perplexing realm of the Daedric Prince of Madness, Sheogorath, the titular Shivering Isles. The Isles are split down the middle between mania and dementia, two polar opposite interpretations of madness. Dementia is depressing and dark, populated by twisted, demonic creatures and harrowing landscapes. Mania is a visual paradise, with lush fauna and an ever-present golden glow. But it's a land that's just as deadly as dementia, it's only that its dangers are better hidden. The split between mania and dementia, the two different types of madness, is the only rule that makes some sense in the Shivering Isles. Otherwise, it's a place of utter, incomprehensible madness. The capital, New Sheoth, mimics a real-world city with its shops, houses and taverns, but it's unclear how the city functions day to day. Shops exist, but there's no economy. People own houses, but there are no property laws. It's an accepted fact that people are utterly insane, and yet there's a stringently enforced criminal justice system. If you thought some of Cyrodiil's inhabitants were odd, then the inhabitants of New Sheoth will well and truly shock you. Entering the city from the north, one of the first encounters you'll have will be with Bighead, a lizard who begs you to help him find his magical fork. On the streets of Bliss, you may also find one highly strung, half-crouching, amiable Fanrien, who's convinced that every wall is conspiring to crush him. The player isn't left to bask in the Shivering Isles' eccentricity, however. After arriving in a flurry of butterflies, the player soon learns that the land is facing an existential threat, the Grey March. This cataclysm takes place once every millennium, when Sheogorath's rival, the Prince of Order, Jiggalag, invades. The reason that the Prince of Madness opened a portal to the Shivering Isles in the first place was to recruit a champion to fight the threat of the Grey March, and the player is the lucky candidate. You might ask, how invested can you be in a mission to save a land that is utterly bizarre? The answer is very. Starting the Shivering Isles, it seems like the whole DLC is a bit of a joke, but as you progress, a heartfelt story emerges, a story that is somehow heightened because it's wrapped in a bundle of weirdness. The magic of the Shivering Isles is that its nonsensical world and nonsense characters provoke you to think about themes such as identity, punishment, and reality. The Elder Scrolls IV Oblivion was a game that was comfortable with its own silliness, and it worked. You can take Oblivion's weirdness seriously. The game's funny quest lines, strange characters, and sometimes downright illogical lore never detracted at any point from the world building, but rather enriched it. There's plenty of conventional heroic quests in the fourth Elder Scrolls game, and many of those quests are great, but by throwing a bit of weirdness into the mix, Bethesda created a game where you never truly knew what was around the corner. So what does this all mean? Why ruminate on a 17-year-old game? Bethesda's upcoming RPG, Starfield, motivated me to go back and take a look at my favourite Bethesda game again. Bethesda is selling Starfield as their most technically complex game to date. Procedural generation, shipbuilding, realistic star systems, all of these things are impressive, but they aren't necessarily what makes a fantastic role-playing video game. Oblivion was made with the limited technology and resources Bethesda had access to in 2006, and yet it's arguably the most compelling fantasy world they have ever created. Imagination, not fancy graphics or gameplay, is what makes for a stellar role-playing game. From Starfield's various trailers, I get very little sense of the game's story. This is perhaps intentional on Bethesda's part, as they probably don't want to give too much away before the game releases on the 6th of September. But I'm fearful that Starfield will be what Bethesda thinks its fanbase wants, another generic sci-fi RPG that privileges gameplay gimmicks over imagination. I'd much rather see a sci-fi game that embodies the spirit of Oblivion. Thank you for watching this video. Please let me know what your thoughts are in the comments, and if you haven't played the Elder Scrolls IV, and particularly its DLC, the Shivering Isles, then I really do recommend you do. You can find the game cheaply on Steam or GOG or the PlayStation Store, the Xbox Store, whatever platform you play on. Don't be too put off by the graphics. The game is absolutely fantastic, and it's, in my opinion, the best Elder Scrolls game that's been created to date. But thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye bye.